All right, everybody, welcome back. Totally Driven Radio. And as I say every time, I can listen to Stacy Keach repeat that over and over and over. It's the greatest bumper ever.
It is. That deep voice. You can't mistake it.
I'm telling you, it's a classic. But anyway, we have another iconic person on the line. I'm very, very excited by this. A person who has touched, I'm sure, millions of people's lives and childhoods. The one and only Donny Most is now live on Totally Driven Radio. How you doing, Donny?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And let me see real quick if you can remember. I actually met you at Shore Theater a couple months ago.
Oh,
and
okay.
It was the last day. It was almost towards the end. And I came up to you and Anson, and I wanted to get an autograph and a picture. And then I said to you, I said, hey, you were supposed to do my show before, and I handed you a business card. And you were like,
oh, that's right.
Yeah. Yes. So,
yes.
And so it was kind of funny when your PR guy emailed me a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, oh, this is too funny. So we finally meet on the air. So
that's funny, yeah.
So
I do remember that. I do, and I felt bad that somehow there'd been I don't know what happened, that we were supposed to do it, and I don't know. But we're doing it now, so that's cool.
Exactly. So now this is where it got weird, okay? So I go to get my picture taken with you guys, right? And we take the picture, and I'm like so psyched. I'm like, freaking Ralph and Potsy. I mean, you guys are permanently embedded in my brain, right? So all of a sudden, Anson turns to me and goes, you got to lose some weight, man. And I'm like, what? Like he's like a few inches taller, so he's looking down at me, and I'm like, what? He's like, you really got to lose some weight, man. Like, you have a beautiful family there. You know, you really got to do something. You got to make a major change in your life. You got to live. You got to want to be around. And I'm like mortified now. And
wow.
I'm toying in my head with doing gastric bypass surgery. And I turned around and said that to him. And he was just like, you don't want to do that. Like, you don't want to do surgery. Just lose the weight. You can just flip that switch in your head. And it was like a whole long conversation. And I was completely mortified. So now, like, I leave there, and I have a 2-hour drive back home to Philly. So I'm driving home, and I'm, like, literally speechless. I like a picture of Anson, like, talking to me about this. I'm like, I must really be that overweight to where he has to just come out and say something to me. So now this 2-hour drive, like, I'm beating myself up in my head. I go home, I'm beating myself up. I'm, like, so upset. Finally, the next day, I'm, like, talking to my wife about it. She goes, oh, I didn't tell you? I'm like, what? I told him. I'm like, you told him what? She's like, I told him you were thinking about getting gastric bypass. I'm like, oh, my God. I was so mortified. I was just like, here's this guy I looked up to, and he just, like, turns to me and goes, you know, you really got to lose weight. I was just like, oh, my Lord. Like, it was such a, like, weird scenario that happened.
So it was really brought on by your wife making that comment to him is what
yes.
sort of was the catalyst. Right?
Yeah.
I see. So she was sort of like pushing, not pushing. I mean, she probably didn't know what that answer would go off on a whole, you know, sort of lecture about it. But maybe she was trying to get him to say something. You think? I don't know. You think?
It was like at one point, like I'm like, wow, like that was like really stand up to him. Like he really cared. Like I was like really touched. And then on the other hand, like I'm fighting with myself. I'm like, you're a fat bastard. Like this guy just turned to you. He doesn't know you, and he's just like, you got to lose weight. It was like so weird.
It is bizarre. Now you kind of know. You know a little bit where it originated from. It wasn't totally coming from him out of left field, you know.
Yeah, so. Exactly.
Well, Anson's very, Anson's like one of my best friends, you know, and he's a great guy, and he's really into sort of motivating and you know, his book out. He's got a book out now called "Singing to a Bulldog." That is, it's sort of motivational and inspirational, and trying to share things with people and help people. So he's very much into that, and I guess you experienced a little bit of that.
Now, you're out doing a musical thing where you're out. It's like a big band swing type thing. You got a band. You're out there. You're singing.
Yeah.
And instantly, totally. I thought back to the Happy Days times when you guys. I mean, that was a big part of the show where you guys were like a band. Were you guys like a real, actual band?
Not really. No. What happened was, we were we didn't really play the instruments. I played a little piano when I was a kid, but I was still basically faking the piano. And we were all faking that we were playing the instruments. Anson was singing, and I would sing backup sometimes. But I didn't get to really sing much back then. And it's a very funny story in his book that I mentioned, Singing to a Bulldog, which and in that chapter, Anson explains how he could convince Gary to let them so that they would let us form a band at Arnold's, and that he would be the singer. And he tells the story. So what happened was, once that happened, and then we were doing all that, I kind of felt, well, I had actually sung. I was singing before I was acting. When I was young, I was 14, 15 years old, and I was singing. I was singing as part of this professional troupe of kids my age, 14, 15, and 16. There were 7 of us, and we sang up in the Catskill Mountains this summer when I was 15, and all the nightclubs up there, the hotels. So that was my first love, was singing. I was really into that music, the jazz standards, swing, and the Great American Songbook, and all of that. So when I went to Gary, going, I sing too, and you should you should let me. But Gary was like, well, he already, in his mind, well, I already have my singer, and I could do backup, and he was pretty firm. He didn't want to change it, and so I didn't, I think I did get to sing in 1 or 2 episodes. There was a Valentine's show where Joni had this sort of fantasy, where she was thinking about all the different characters on the show and what they would be doing on Valentine's Day or something. So I sang on that show, but I didn't, for the most part, really get to do anything. Certainly not the kind of music that I really love, which is, we talked about the standards and the jazz and the swing. Right. So I decided, after all this time, the timing just felt right to me. And about a year ago, I started doing it. I felt compelled. And I think to a large degree, that kind of music has really come back into vogue and in favor again in the last 10, 15 years or so. And, with Tony Bennett doing it with Lady Gaga and Michael Bublé and, Natalie Cole and Harry Connick had kind of brought it on, and Diana Krall and Steve Tyrell. So the timing just felt really right to me, and there were things that were just pushing me in that direction, and I went with it, and it's been great. I started doing clubs out here in L.A. Just about a year ago, and then in New York, I did 54 Below, which is this great club. Did it twice, and I did a club in Chicago and San Diego, and at a big gala the night before the Kentucky Derby, I performed. So all this stuff, it's been really cool. And at Sundance Film Festival at a private party. So and now I'm coming to New York and New Jersey to do some shows. I'm leaving on Saturday, and I'll be performing this Tuesday at the Iridium Jazz Club in New York City, Tuesday night, the 7th. And then the 12th, probably not far from you in Philly. I don't know how far Asbury Park is from Philly, but not too far, right?
It's about an hour and a half.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll be at McCloon Supper Club in Asbury Park on the 12th, Sunday night, a week from this Sunday. So, and then I go back out to Long Island for a show on the 25th of July at Theater 3 in Port Jefferson, New York. So, some good dates coming up, and I just have such a blast. I can't tell you how much fun It is, because it's the music that I've loved, and getting to do it with, I have a 7-piece band with 3 horns and all these great arrangements, and the musicians are great, and the music is the best. So and it's just in my blood, it's in my soul. I just eat it up.
That's awesome. Now, is this your first time like doing anything musical like this beside when you were younger?
Well, not really. No, like I said, I did it before I was an actor. So I mean, it's like riding a bike. I was doing it at a young age, but then I did musical theater as well. So I was, I had to do a lot of singing in different shows that I've been in, and then. I also, on TV, there was a time when I did get some big band arrangements done when I was on the show, and I went on, I performed on a couple of different variety shows and telethons and sang there with big bands and all that. So, I've done it through the years, but not like this. This is different because it's my own show, and,
right.
I'm handpicking all the music and how I'm going to do it and the order I'm going to do it. I like to take the audience on a real kind of a journey, and so there's a real arc to the show, and tell stories and some happy day stuff, and people seem to be really loving the shows. So it's great. It's a mutual thing that we're having great times up there.
So it's almost like sounds like one of them storytellers things where you tell some stories and music and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not to some degree. I mean, it's still predominantly the music, but I like to weave I like to give context for the music, and people seem to really like that. I don't like instead of just getting up there and just singing songs. I like to give context about maybe what the music means to me, how I came to it, a little background, and it really because the people who wrote the songs and where I first saw them, whether it be in what movie it was a Sinatra song, what movie I saw it in, like Pal Joey or stuff like that, and some of the other artists who've done it that influenced me, and all that kind of stuff. I think it's I didn't know if people, when I first started doing it, I felt like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to explain some of this. I didn't know how people would respond, but from the very first show, people were saying, "Oh, and I loved all the talk that all the stories and the information." People I was surprised that they liked it as much as they did. I thought, well, maybe they think it was okay, but they liked it a lot more than I ever expected, which was great,
That's awesome. Now, do you have any plans to maybe do any recording at all, or?
Yeah, I am. I'm definitely going to do that, and it's in the works. And I'll be able to talk more. Maybe I'll have to come on your show again when it's ready, because it's a little bit down the road. But I could talk more. But I am going to be doing some recording, and I'm really excited about that.
Oh, that's awesome. That is very
awesome.
So now, what about like the acting? And I know you were doing you were starting into directing. Like, what about that?
Yeah.
Are you going to continue on with that, or?
Oh, I sure hope so. I certainly don't want to, put that. Relinquish or put that aside for any length of time. I actually just did a role in it was a really cool role in a independent film, a psychological thriller called Follow, and we shot it in Austin, Texas. I just did it, about 6 weeks ago, and it was a different kind of role. So I really loved it, and it made me realize how much there's so much more I want to do as an actor, and I'm hoping to get, more and more roles. I've done several independent films in the last few years, and I also had a recurring role on Glee. I did 3 episodes, and I have several film projects. You mentioned that I directed. Yes, I've done 3 independent films now, and I have about 4 projects that I'm actively now trying to get set up, and have I just signed with a manager to help on that end, on the literary side for directing and producing, and writing, I guess. So I'm really I really
You're busy.
feel good. I feel good about these. Well, I'm starting to get busier. It's such a crazy business, and it's a roller coaster, and it goes up and down.
Sure.
But I'm hoping there's potential for me to be very, very busy soon, with the music and with the film. Hopefully, get some of these films off the ground for me to direct and stuff, and then more acting. I mean, I'm dying to get as busy as I can.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, the world needs Donny Most out there.
I mean, oh, well, thank you. That's great to hear that you feel that way. And I know I just feel like I have just touched the tip of the iceberg of what I want to do, and I just there's just a lot left, and I'm hoping I get to do it. I gotta stay healthy.
Yeah, right on. No, something too I found out about you was you actually went to Lehigh University for a little bit out here near Philly. And you dropped out to pursue acting. And when I saw that, I just immediately thought like what did your family think? Like were they upset by this? Or were they thinking you were crazy or?
Yeah, well, probably a little of all of the above. I mean, they knew, that I'd been wanting to do this since I was very young. Since I was like 13 is when I started going for, actual lessons in New York City and for singing and acting, and I was pursuing it from that point forward. And then I started getting work beyond the singing. The next year, I really got serious about the acting, and then I got an agent, and I started getting a lot of commercial work. Some big TV national commercials, and I started making some money, and I was still in high school, and then I went to, but then they wanted me, to have a college degree and not rely on acting, because they knew that could be just totally major insanity to invest yourself only in that. So Lehigh was sort of like the backup of going to college, so that you have that as a foundation and a backup. So, but in the meantime, I was continually, to some degree, I commuted into the city. I'd go for auditions and still did commercials. And while I was going to Lehigh, and I was doing as much theater as I could at Lehigh. And then when I went out there for a summer after my junior year. And it was originally just going to be for the summer, but then, I wound up I went out on some auditions, and I got some parts right away, some TV guest roles. And I started building up some momentum. And then my agent and manager, I went back to New York. I was all set to go for my senior year. And then they talked to me, and they said, you should think about taking 6 months off, because you got some momentum going and you got work right away, and they felt like I could do very well if the season was getting very busy. So I didn't have to think about it too much. It was sort of like total animal instinct. It was like, that's what I'm doing. And I knew my parents were going to be, concerned, to say the least. But
sure.
But I felt that, the idea was, hey, I'm going to take 6 months off. Let's see what happens. And I was in a position where, because I'd been working and making money, I could sort of finance it myself and do it myself. So I flew back to LA and pursued it, and I got another part right away, and then like nothing for like 3 months, and I was like, this was a mistake, and I was thinking, I'm going to have to go back to school, and but then it was shortly after that I found out about the interview for Happy Days and went through a whole series of interviews and a screen test and then and started doing the show. So things I didn't get back to Lehigh for my senior year.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm happy you didn't. I'm happy. I'm happy you ended up on Happy Days.
Yeah. I am too. I am too. It was an incredible experience working with wonderful people, very, very talented people, and just a chance of a lifetime, and it changed my life in a big way. And it's just hard to. Sometimes I look back. It seems like another life, totally different. It's hard to even grasp sometimes.
Now, I'm sure people probably, whenever they'll talk Happy Days with you, they're going to probably say, what was it like working with Henry Winkler or Ron Howard and all that? Whenever I talk about Happy Days, and I talk to my children about this, and whenever I see it on, I make them sit down and watch it with me, because I'm like, growing up, watching Happy Days, it was like watching life lessons every Tuesday night with you guys. And I always just say, Mr. and Mrs. C are like the role model parents that people should strive to be. And I want to know, what was it like working with Marion and Tom? I mean, because they just seemed like the best.
They were fantastic. I really miss Tom. Sadly he passed away about 4 years ago, and
right.
He was a great guy, and Marion is doing wonderfully. She's as vibrant as ever. She's one of the most wonderful people you'll ever want to meet, and to work with them. Oh my gosh, and everybody. I mean, I remember to give you an idea. I when we first started doing the show, I didn't really know anybody out here in Los Angeles, and all of my family friends were back in New York. So when I was doing the show, this became sort of like my family, and I'd be done working for the day, and my scenes would be done, and they'd say, okay, you can go home or whatever, and I would be sitting there watching. I remember watching a lot of the scenes in the Cunningham kitchen or with Tom and Marion and Ron and Aaron, and I didn't want to go home. I just wanted to sit there and watch them, and Tom. Of course, Ron, we all knew him he'd been in the business since he was a kid, and Opie on Andy Griffith's show, The Music Man, and all that. So it was great to watch him, and I knew Tom, because Tom had been a pretty big star. He'd won the Tony on Broadway in Fiorello back in the 50s, and had done movies and stuff. So I knew of his stature, and so watching Marion, I was not familiar with her past work, but it was apparent very quickly that there was a lot of magic going on and the chemistry with her and Tom and Ron and Aaron, and it was just I would sit there and they'd look at me. I remember Tom would say, Donny, what are you doing? Go home. You can go home now. What are you doing here? And I'm like, I don't want to go home. This is better. And it was an education. I was soaking it all in. It was a great experience to be part of that and learn as much as I was 20 years old, and I was being a sponge.
Right. How hard was it when you left the show? How hard was that for you to make that decision?
It was very difficult. But I'd been doing the show for 7 years when I left, and there were a lot of different factors that went into it. Too many, and some that I'm not going to. It would be too hard to get into.
Sure.
But the biggest, the main reasons were, I'd been playing one character for 7 years. I knew it was going to get tougher and tougher to break away from that. And as an actor, you want to have a career that lasts for a long time and
Right.
with range of roles and stuff, and I felt like I was starting to get really, you know, pigeonhole, typecast, and all that. Which that's what happens when you're on a show. It's very, very, very popular, and I also felt that the quality of the shows wasn't the same, and that it was starting to kind of go down, and so I thought it's time to move on, you know.
So,
but it was tough.
So a big turn that came out of that show is Jump the Shark. When do you think the show jumped the shark?
Well, you know, it's kind of like that's like I was saying. That's one of the reasons I decided to leave. I guess before they had coined that phrase, I was in my gut feeling that, you know. So I think I mean they looked, you know, whoever they is looked at that moment when in that episode when they had Fonzie you know, on water skis jumping over the shark and all that as the moment.
Right.
For me it probably started before that. You know, that might have been sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. But I felt it was happening even before that, and that's why I was starting to get frustrated and
Sure.
and not as you know, it wasn't as fulfilling and rewarding, and I just didn't feel the show was growing as in a creative way like it had been for the first 4 years, you know, first 4
Right.
or 5 seasons. I felt there was real. It was a very fervent, creative time, and then it's hard to sustain that, you know. After I think 5 years is what they always say. It's very hard to go beyond that, and not that you can't keep a show on the air, but to keep it at the same level and where it's still fresh and growing all the time, you know.
Do you have I mean, a big thing that came out of that too was like merchandise. Do you have a Ralph Malph doll?
Yeah, I did. My wife went out and bought some of the stuff because I didn't have any, you know. So she bought, you know, the doll and the glass and a few other things. You know? I've got a bunch of lunchbox and all that kind of stuff.
That's funny.
So yeah, it's nice to have souvenirs. Why not, right?
Sure, absolutely. I have a Fonzie doll. I mean, come on.
All right. All right. Great.
Now, something like I said earlier in the interview, like I met you a few months ago at Chiller Theater. Do you do a lot of the appearances like that?
Not really. Haven't been doing too many of those. Anson and I had done one of those years earlier. I don't know, 7 years earlier, and that was the last time we had done Chiller. And we've done here and there. We do, you know, sort of a personal appearance, autograph show, and a few times what we've done is we've done speaking engagements together, where we go and just, you know, share stories and show film clips and you know, do Q&A and all that kind of stuff. We're actually going to be doing that in Ohio at the end of July. I forget the name of the town, but I think it's Lakewood, Ohio. And but we are going for the very first time, and this is kind of different. Anson and I are going there's a very, very big Star Trek convention in Las Vegas every year, and we're doing that because I actually appeared in a guest starring role in a 2-part episode of Star Trek Voyager, and Anson directed 6 episodes of Voyager and a few episodes of and Deep Space Nine he directed. So neither of us have ever attended one of these conventions, but we got invited this year, so the 2 of us are going to be going there. It's like August 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th for the big Star Trek convention. We'll be there. So that ought to be interesting.
That's awesome.
You know.
It's got to shock you, though. I mean, like, like I'm even saying, like, meeting you guys, I mean, that's like a lifelong thing. Like, I mean, I grew up with you guys, and so many other people did. Does it kind of like almost freak you out, like the effect that you had on people's lives?
Yeah, it does. I just when people come up and some of the things that they'll share with me, and stories in terms of how much it affected them, and in positive ways, and how much it helped them. People talk about how much it helped them, and it was a great respite for them, or escape from things that they were dealing with, and brought them, such joy and laughter, and certain people talking about dealing with health. It was helping them heal when they were dealing with major health issues, and they get to watch the show and look forward to it. So, having that kind of hearing those kind of comments and people sharing that with me, it does. It's hard to wrap your head around it sometimes, because it's almost bigger than what I can understand. It's like it's hard for. I don't know. It's strange. It's like two different people or something. You know
right.
what I mean? It's because it was a character I was playing, and it wasn't me, but it is still part of you, but that they felt such an affinity and related to all of us in such a way that it's great. I mean, it's fantastic. It's just sometimes hard to, like I mentioned earlier, fully wrap your head around it.
Right. I have 2 more questions, and we'll do some plugs, and I'll let you go.
Yeah.
First one, big thing, in the world now is reality TV. Have you ever been offered any reality TV things?
No, and I wouldn't do any. Actually, there was one, but it wasn't really a reality TV. It was more, it was celebrity ghost stories, and it was like just sharing if you ever had any really interesting stories that would be appropriate for their show, and I actually had one, so I went on and talked about that. So I guess that's but I don't really know if that's I don't consider that a reality show. That was more just sort of it was more like being interviewed and talking.
Sure.
That's all that was. So, but no reality of the other kinds of reality shows I have no interest in at all.
Gotcha. And last question, if I can get you to cut an ID for me before I let you go,
Sure.
Whichever you prefer. Is this Don Most or Donny Most? And you're listening to Totally Driven Radio.
Okay. Tell me when.
Go for it.
Hi, this is Donny Most, and you're listening to Totally Driven Radio.
Awesome. Donny, thank you so much. And where can everybody get hold of you if they want to find you? Now, I found you on Twitter, and you had deleted your Twitter.
But now I'm back on. It's on at, what did I change it to? At Most_Don. And,
okay.
And I also have a Facebook page. It's under Don Most. It's not a personal page. It's like a fan page under Don Most.
Right.
So that, people can come and see. I post stuff on there and at Most_Don. And I have a web page that I post. They could see under the calendar section where I'm going to be appearing and stuff and latest news. So it's a donmost.net, and there's a calendar section and then a news section. So
cool. And we have to get you to come to Philly. You got to bring the band to Philly and do some singing and swinging down here.
I would love to. There was some guy talking to me about doing it at some place, and then they never, they were just talking. Well, somebody I met at Chiller, and
really?
They were saying, "Oh, we're going to bring you down," but it hasn't happened. But I hope, I hope I can get down there. I'm sure they have some good jazz clubs and places like that. So I'll talk to my manager and see if he can get me booked somewhere there.
Awesome.
It would have been good from Asbury Park. Could have made.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah, but I don't. It's going to be too late to make that happen now.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Anyway,
definitely.
one of these days. But
Absolutely.
All right. Well, yeah, I better run. But thanks so much, and it was good talking with you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for finally catching up. And when the album comes out, come back and we'll promote that as well.
Yes. Yeah. Let's do that. Let's do that
Awesome.
for sure. All right. Good
All right, Don. Thank you. You too.
Okay.
Take care.
Stay well. Bye-bye.
You too.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. There he goes. The one and only Donny Most. And you can see him next week, New York, in New York City, July 7th at the Iridium. And then the following week, July 12th, at McLoon's Supper Club in Asbury Park. And you can go to donmost.net for more dates. He's got some video clips up there. He's actually got a phenomenal voice. Like I was saying in the beginning of the show to Janetti. I mean, at times you would think he's like Frank Sinatra. It's amazing. That was awesome.
Tell him to sit on it.
I wanted the how are you?